GAU-21 is not just another machine gun mounted on a helicopter or a naval vessel. It is a modern marvel of firepower, capable of unleashing devastating bursts at over 1,000 rounds per minute. When it is fired, the sound is deafening, the recoil is bone-rattling, and the effect on targets is nothing short of overwhelming. This is why it has earned a reputation as one of the deadliest defensive and offensive weapons in modern aerial warfare. But there was one particular moment that pushed the GAU-21 into military history, a moment that shook the battlefield and left adversaries scrambling in disbelief. The Houthis never saw it coming, and the story of this shot has become legendary among both pilots and ground crews. To understand why this event stands out so much, it is important to know what the GAU-21 is designed for and the brutal mechanics behind it. The GAU-21, also known as the M3M, is essentially a modernized version of the classic M2 Browning machine gun, which has served the United States and many other nations since World War II. The difference is that this updated version is lighter, faster, and more adaptable for today's warfare. Chambered in .50 caliber, it is able to fire armor-piercing rounds, incendiary rounds, and specialized ammunition capable of tearing through vehicles, aircraft, and fortified positions. When mounted on helicopters like the CH-53 or the MH-60, the GAU-21 provides aerial dominance, ensuring that no enemy can get too close without paying the price. Now imagine this scene. A U.S. Navy helicopter hovers over dangerous waters, carrying Marines on a mission to secure vital shipping lanes. The Houthis, armed and determined, have been launching attacks in the region, using small boats, missiles, and guerrilla tactics. They thought they understood the limits of U.S. aerial defense. They believed that their speed and unpredictability would let them get close enough to strike. What they never accounted for was the brutal precision and sheer destructive power of the GAU-21. The legendary shot that would go down in history began like many other confrontations. A group of fast Houthi boats tried to close in on a target, attempting to swarm in numbers and overwhelm defenses. They moved quickly, zigzagging to avoid incoming fire, thinking that the helicopters circling above would struggle to track them. It was a tactic that had given them some confidence in the past. But on this day, one-door gunner manning the GAU-21 had other plans. With the helicopter rocking slightly in the air and the boats darting across the waves below, the gunner unleashed a burst. The weapon roared to life, spitting out .50 caliber rounds at more than 1,000 per minute. Tracers lit up the sky, carving glowing lines down toward the water. The first few bursts bracketed the target, walking the rounds closer and closer. Then, in one fluid motion, the gunner lined up the lead boat and fired a precise, short burst. In an instant, the rounds slammed into the small craft, tearing through its hull and detonating fuel. Flames erupted, and the boat exploded into a fireball that lit up the ocean. The other boats veered off in panic, but the damage was done. The Houthis never saw it coming, and they had underestimated just how deadly the GAU-21 truly was. What made this shot legendary was not just the destruction of one boat, it was the speed, precision, and sheer dominance displayed in a matter of seconds. Reports later described how the gunner managed to neutralize the most dangerous of the incoming threats with a single, controlled burst. This was not just random suppressive fire. It was surgical, deliberate, and devastating. The weapon system had proved that it could not only protect but completely dominate an engagement when used by skilled hands. But let us step back for a moment and appreciate the difficulty of such a task. Firing a GAU-21 is no easy job. The weapon itself produces enormous recoil, and stabilizing it on a moving platform like a helicopter requires both training and instinct. The gunner must compensate for wind, movement, and the unpredictable maneuvers of enemy boats below. Every squeeze of the trigger demands control and precision, or else ammunition is wasted, and the target slips away. To hit a fast, moving boat in rough waters while flying in a vibrating, shifting helicopter is like trying to thread a needle during an earthquake. Yet, on that day, the gunner did it flawlessly, etching their place in military history. The impact of this event rippled far beyond the battlefield. For the Houthis, it was a wake-up call. They realized that the U.S. was not just deploying overwhelming force, but was also combining that force with unmatched accuracy. Their tactics of swarming and hit and run suddenly looked vulnerable. For U.S. and allied forces, it was proof that the GAU-21 could not just defend but actively deter threats. Commanders began to speak with even greater confidence about the capabilities of their aerial assets. For the crews who manned those helicopters, it became a story of pride, a reminder that their training and discipline could make the difference in life and death situations. The psychological factor cannot be ignored either. When enemies see their comrades obliterated in an instant by a weapon they thought they could evade, it changes everything. Fear spreads quickly, and hesitation sets in. The GAU-21 became not only a physical weapon but also a psychological one, breaking the will of those who thought they could test U.S. resolve. The terrifying sound of its bursts, the glowing tracers cutting across the sky, and the devastating explosions that followed all combined to make the weapon a symbol of dominance. Some might ask why this particular engagement became so famous, when many other firefights also involved the GAU-21. The answer lies in the circumstances. It was a perfect storm. The Houthis were bold, believing they had a chance to outmaneuver a U.S. helicopter. The gunner was skilled, trained to read the situation and act decisively, and the weapon itself performed flawlessly under pressure. The result was a single, decisive moment that shattered enemy confidence and reminded the world of American firepower. Another reason this shot has been remembered is the way it was recorded and shared among military circles. Pilots, gunners, and ground troops passed the story along, some even capturing footage of the engagement. Within days, it was circulating as an example of what the GAU-21 could do when put to the test. To the crews who fly every day in dangerous skies, this moment was not just about bragging rights, it was about survival, proving that they could rely on their weapons when it mattered most. What is also fascinating is how this event ties into the broader history of the .50 caliber machine gun. From World War II bombers to modern helicopters, the .50 cal has always been a symbol of dominance. The GAU-21 is just the latest evolution of this legacy, and that legendary shot against the Houthis shows why the weapon continues to endure. Technology has advanced, but sometimes the simplest solution, a heavy machine gun with immense stopping power, remains the most effective. Looking ahead, the GAU-21 will continue to play a role in modern warfare. As conflicts evolve and adversaries adapt, the need for flexible, devastating firepower remains. The Houthis and others like them may continue to test their luck, but the lesson of that legendary shot still hangs over every engagement. It is a reminder that one well-placed burst can change the course of a battle, and that underestimating U.S. forces is a deadly mistake. So when people talk about the GAU-21 today, they do not just talk about specifications and numbers. They talk about that moment, that single burst of fire that tore through the waves and destroyed a fast boat before it could strike. They talk about how an enemy that thought it was clever and fast suddenly learned the hard way that modern warfare leaves no room for error. And they talk about the gunner, nameless to most but remembered in military history, who pulled the trigger at just the right time and etched their mark forever. At the end of the day, the GAU-21 is more than just a heavy machine gun. It is protection in its purest form, a weapon that keeps ships safe, covers the skies, and gives troops a fighting chance when the pressure is at its highest. That one shot against the Houthis was not just another burst of gunfire. It was a moment that showed exactly why this weapon is feared and why soldiers trust it with their lives. Stories like that will echo for years, through military briefings, in documentaries, and most importantly in the memories of those who have been there, who know what it means to depend on a weapon when everything is on the line. And maybe the biggest takeaway is this: if you ever find yourself on the wrong side of the GAU-21, you are already out of time. The Houthis learned that lesson the hard way, and history has a way of repeating itself for anyone else who underestimates its power.